Part 1 of 5. At dawn over Rome, a light haze rose from the shops and coops along the Tiber, and the culinary secrets of the capital slipped into conversations as naturally as the smell of smoke. We followed the tracks of menus, not merely recipes, but an entire system of gestures and rules to which Romans subjected food, to denote their status, place in society, and even the character of the... I hold an ancient map of markets and field kitchens, on which a red thread runs through history, from the simple to the capital banquets. We are not speaking merely of food, but of the signs that food carried for people 2000 years ago. Chapter 1. The primordial porridge and plebeian bread. First, the food of the common people. We stand before excavations at the edge of the land, where once glazes gleamed, and the cheerful cries of slaves busy with smoke. The Roman plebeian, in those times, according to sources, often ate what could be obtained without excessive luxury, from porridge of spelt or wheat, bread, the simplest grains, and olives. But even they had their own line item of expenses, the ingenuity and skill to make a simple dish that would not upset the stomach and would give strength for the next day. We read the sardonic notes of Pliny the Elder, who, being a gourmand by nature, could not resist describing the everyday kitchen of a simple man. Porridge of spelt, boiled in water, thick and sticky, but warm and hearty. Bread with bread yeast and olives. So he described the ordinary table. Next come beans, radish, cucumber infusions, and greens, sometimes eggs and dairy products in limited amounts. For midday, porridge and bread with stewed vegetables, sometimes a drop of olive oil to keep the flavor from being too poor. But even simple Romans had ways, in mythical memory, to create a richer taste. In the procurement of ingredients and their storage, there existed a whole set of practical knowledge. How to store flour so it wouldn't spoil, how to keep seeds for winter, how to carry to market. Food here is not merely sustenance, but a whole cult, where every ingredient carries not only a taste, but also social meaning. Our modern view, from the vantage point of archaeology and letters, says that in the everyday kitchen of the plebeian, as with any ordinary person, what mattered more was not what was set on the table, but how to prepare it so as to fill. And yet there were flavorings here too: salt, olive oil, and vinegar, sometimes grain enriched with aromatic herbs. We see not luxury, but the possibility to preserve strength and health in the conditions of a city with a complex life. What did the emperors and the nobility eat? But for some reason, the air here changes. We move to a higher rung on the ladder of consumption. We stride into palaces and villas, where the menu is governed not only by taste, but by the power presumed to govern. The Roman nobility, and sometimes the emperors, organized banquets at which exotic dishes grew upon the tables, dishes that ordinary people could not afford in life for an ordinary village. This is not merely food, it is a sign of status, social position, a demonstration of wealth and control over markets and supplies across the Mediterranean. In the hall of the triclinia begins our view of the feast. In vast halls, the light that sets shadows on marble walls, on the tables are peacocks, pheasants, and exotic birds, conspicuously luxurious dishes made from robust and spicy meat stews. Here too are lilies and soni, that is, dishes made from the rarest ingredients brought from the empire's far corners, from Syria, Egypt, Spain. However, we speak of reality. Some dishes are attested in records and cookbooks of that time. Of course, not all dishes can be reconstructed exactly. Much remained in the oral tradition of cuisine, presented to guests audiovisually, with couches and the whisper of a hungry crowd. A special place was occupied by garum, a fermented fish sauce with a characteristic sharp odor which the Romans adored. It was not merely a seasoning, it was an entire instrument of taste. In one of Plutarch's descriptions, we can read how garum was added to dishes with fish and meat, and sometimes used as the base for sauces to emphasize flavor and create a pronounced accent on the dish. But garum also had social significance. It was chosen by not everyone, and not everyone could afford to have this aroma in its pure form. In the house of the nobility, garum was almost like a bank account, an expensive ingredient that showed that the request had been fulfilled and that the cook had enough authority to afford such a. The tables of the nobility overflowed with exotic dishes. Here are fruits, sea treasures, and birds dyed with spices, and whole dishes of diverse meat and fish combinations. The wealthy, of course, could afford even rarer and more extraordinary dishes known to few. For example, peacocks and fricassees of rare seafood, a sign that state purchases had managed to bring products to the table not only through legal channels, but also through. It should be said that Roman cuisine was far from a simple combination of ingredients. It reveals complex culinary schemes, including the preparation of a meatloaf and the baking of dough with the addition of honey and nuts, in the form of desserts, marshmallows of ancient times. This is not merely a menu. It is a philosophy of taste, in which each dish was a sign for guests, and the cook, a taste engineer, who, with the help of spices, sauces, and preservation, create. We approach a topic that is perhaps the most dramatic and understandable to our time. How a menu titled The Emperor's Feast can be a mirror of politics and social structure. Part 3 of 5. Emperor's feasts, as a rule, served not only for the pleasure of the stomach, but also for political purposes, to align laws, promote new favorites, and demonstrate power through the provision of dishes that were invested in relations with the provinces and the courts. In one of the striking examples, we see that at feasts they often invited even gallerists and artists to show that food is not merely sustenance, but a cultural event in which the state is demonstrated through tastes and aromas. Chapter 3. Garum and the power of taste. Garum is not just a sauce. It is a symbol that binds together food, economy, and even the moral choices of society. In Pirate archaeological collection, garum was made from a 4-part mixture of fish, spices and herbs were added, and in the end, a thick, rich aroma was produced, which many consider to be even stronger than the scents of other spices. This sauce had many variations, from lighter and more delicate to dark and thick, and each cook chose their own flavor profile. Why was garum so important? Because in real Roman cooking, the Roman was guided. In a wealthy household, garum could be used as a sharply expressed salt to intensify dishes and could be sold under contract with merchants, which allowed aligning the budget and emphasizing the family's status. In a richer household, garum became not merely a sauce, it was part of a ceremony when the cook demonstrated his talent, and the imperial patroness, or the idol of power, in turn, had to assess the mastery and show that the state pays attention to culinary culture. Chapter 4. The Feast. Theater of Power and Culture. A feast in the imperial palace is not merely a celebration of taste. It is a theater of political gestures. Who sits in the main place, who receives a cluster of wreaths, and who a supporting role. This was an entire system. Invitations. The emperor could present himself as a guardian and benefactor, but also as a dictator of taste. If a certain dish did not conform to the course of evening manners, he could gradually alter the program and thus send a political message to all present. We see in the sources lists of dishes that frequently recurred at the banquets of the nobility and heads of state. Dishes of poultry, game, fish, and seafood. various kinds of bread, sweet dishes, and bakery products, which demonstrated wealth and carefully placed accents on the table. On the tables were enormous dishes, each executed with great care and adorned with greens and sauces. This is no accident. All the dishes had symbolic meaning. Part 4 of 5. This language of food was understood by banquet stewards as well as by the public and by slaves who knew their roles in the hall. It is also important that at imperial banquets, dishes from novelties, rare foods brought from distant provinces, were common. This was not only a demonstration of wealth and power, but also an attempt to support trade and political ties within the empire. For example, seafood and rare kinds of fish were supplied through ports and transshipment towns of the Mediterranean, from Carthage to Alexandria, from Spain to Syria. Each dish is a small story of roots, contracts, and mutual dependence between the provinces and Rome. Chapter 5. What the common people and the wealthy ate, in the synergy of time and space. To see the full picture, we need to look at food not only as dishes, but also as the transport of ingredients that crosses continents and oceans. In the era of the empire, Romans did not live in isolation. Their products moved through a network of cities, ports, and markets. Consumption in Rome and in the provinces often depended on seasonality and climate. In the heat of summer, cold dishes and fresh fruits appeared on the tables. In winter, more substantial and heavier dishes, richer in nourishment. We also see how taste was formed and developed with changes in social status and the role of women in the family. Among the nobility, women often took charge of planning the dishes for major celebrations. They chose the menu based on tradition, but also on contemporary tastes and the guests' preferences. For the plebs, the kitchen was a point of daily life, where one could buy provisions at the market and dishes were prepared at home or in the thermopolia, a street-side food stall where people could buy ready-made meals on the go. We are repeating ourselves because this is the essence of the analysis. The cuisine of ancient Rome is not only recipes, but also the structure of society and the history of trade, diplomacy, and political symbols. The Romans did not see food as a random pleasure, but as a tool of influence. With their share of power and culture, they declared, "We are here. We can. We control the networks of supply, road, the reality of painstaking reconstructions." And if we are talking about this now, it means we hear the echoes of past eras, in museum halls, in reconstructed kitchens, and in archaeological excavations. We follow not only dishes, but people: cooks, merchants, slaves, palace owners, emperors, and ordinary citizens, whose fates intertwined with the dishes we study today. Our reconstructions are not attempts to reproduce ancient recipes exactly, but also a bold conjecture about what the menu and the feast of those times might have looked like. Yet a language that shows which roads, which markets, and which channels of trust and power existed in ancient Rome. We see that plebeian cuisine, though modest, carried no less meaning and value, and the luxury of imperial banquets was not only a demonstration of taste, but also a tool of power, through which connections between the provinces. And here, sitting on the edge of the excavations of the old market in Pompeii, where traces of ancient dishes are still kept in clay vessels, we hear not only the whisper of waves and the moist song of water, but also the scent of garum, which reminds us, in the world of humankind, this is not merely a tale of what people ate 2000 years ago. This is a history of power, of layer after layer of social boundaries that food laid down and pressed into one large, living, and sometimes harsh feast of human civilization. If we look further, beyond our time, we will see that many principles have remained the same. At the table, there is always a choice between what is useful and what is pleasant, between budget constraints and the pursuit of beauty, between the method of preparation and the cultural meaning of the dish. And therein lies the meaning of our story. Not what we eat, but why exactly this way and how it has shaped the world around us. So, this is a history that remains important for understanding that food can be memory and weapon and a bridge between generations. End of part 5.